Did you try to be faithful and honourable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage?
Yes, absolutely.
And you were?
Yes. Until it became irretrievably broken down. Us both having tried.
I think Diana was terrified. It was a big party on probably on 3 or 4 floors, and she looked around, where's Charles, where's Charles? And then she realised that he must be downstairs on the lower level in the sort of basement area. And she went down there, and there they were. She just confronted Camilla and said, you know, I'm not stupid, I know what's going on. Diana was shaking with fear and rage. On the way back in the car, she was just in hysterical tears. And her protection officer, Ken Worf, was with her, and so he confirms all this, that she just sobbed all the way home, and I don't think Charles said a word.
But I think that was the turning point, really, of the relationship, because, you know, soon thereafter, I think Diana had then given up any hope of a reconciliation. But I suppose, you know, Diana wasn't stupid, and she thought, well, look, you know, I'll go and see what this is like, because they would be people that she was completely unassociated with. These weren't her friends, these were all friends of Camilla's. So, you know, if you try and put yourself in that position, would you go to a party when you didn't like any of them? So there had to be a raison d'etre here, I guess, and I think Diana wanted to see for herself.
The Prince of Wales had just been on TV to admit adultery with Camilla Parker Bowles, and the Princess that evening was due to go out to the Serpentine Gallery to see her old friend Lord Palumbo and open his new exhibition. I can't go. I'm not going. I'm not going. It'll be too humiliating. The whole world now knows that Charles has been having an affair. He's admitted it. You are going, I said. I've got nothing to wear. Yes, you have got something to wear. I went up to her wardrobe room and picked out a Christina Strombolian dress with a fishtail. This is what you're gonna wear, I said. I can't fit into it. Yes, you can. Put it on. So she slipped it on. Now, to complement that, I think we should have the pearl choker and the sapphire. That's all you need. High heels and those jewels. Right, she put them on and she looked $1 million. Remember, when you go out there, I said, you stride, you hold your head high, you smile, you engage, firm handshake. Say to yourself, I am Diana, Princess of Wales, and I am here to stay.
Is there any possibility of any announcement of your marriage in the near future? Can you tell me? Can you tell me if there's any possibility?
I'm not going to say anything, please.
Right, but Prince Charles did give us a hint himself. He said we wouldn't have to wait too long.
Well, Princess Diana was the daughter of an earl. Her father was Lord Spencer, and he was later Viscount Althorp. They had a house on the Sandringham estate, and then when Diana's grandfather died, they moved to the family stately home, Althorp. And the Spencer family were quite an ancient aristocratic family, and Diana was very proud of her heritage. I mean, they were actually probably grander than the royal family. Well, Diana Spencer, as she was, is probably one of the most insecure people I'd ever met. She was also a real mixture of being completely naive and yet worldly wise. She was always different, so she was always fascinating.
So in the early years, Diana was very much conservative, very, very shy, and you can tell from when she is posing in pictures in that era, she sort of has her head to the side and she's very stooped, so it's as if she's trying to disappear.
She grew up in Althorp Estate, so she had this country style. It was more functional than anything else. And as she moved into Culhern Court, when she lived with her housemates when she was younger, her style remains quite pared back. It's demure. She wears pie-crust collars and cardigans and sweater vests and pleated skirts. I mean, she works at a kindergarten. It's not as much a focus for her.
She didn't really deal well with media attention at the time. She saw photographers following her and she said, look, I'm working at this kindergarten. Do come and follow me and you can take a picture of me and then sort of leave me alone. And she was wearing a sweater vest over a shirt and a long skirt and ballet pumps. And one of the iconic pictures that time, and it just made headlines while she was taking the pictures, the sun shone and she didn't realise it was shining through her skirt. So you could see her legs, which in itself is not particularly shocking, but she didn't realise she was giving the paps what they wanted, and she was said to be horrified by it and that it was a very hard lesson to learn. And you can tell then throughout the years that she knew what shots not to give them.
She now faced possibly the most daunting initiation test for would-be members of the royal family, ordeal by the media. Her flat came under siege. She was followed wherever she went. Even under this pressure, she stayed calm, and in doing so, she won respect.
How well are you coping with all the press attention?
Well, as you can see, you can tell.
Are you bearing up with it quite well, though? Because it must be quite a strain with all of us after you.
Well, it is, naturally.
And you're coping with it all right, though? You seem to be doing very well.
Well, I'm still around.
In her early years, I think the most memorable style that she wore was obviously for her engagement shoot with Prince Charles. And that dress has quite an interesting story behind it. It's a two-piece electric blue suit, and it's got this glorious white pussy blow blouse underneath. And what originally happened is she went to Belleville Sassoon to find her look.
And the sales assistant didn't recognise her. It was a bit like that Pretty Woman scene. They were very much like, we can't help you. But luckily, David Sassoon then realised the mistake and invited her back.
From there, the three of them started to form quite a glorious fashion relationship, and they went on to design her honeymoon outfit. But the Belleville Sassoon outfit that she wore for the engagement shoot was quite considered. It matched her sapphire blue engagement ring, and it's the start of how we know Diana now, and she's starting to use fashion for a reason.
I personally think that Diana fell in love with Prince Charles. It's obvious to me that she was a young, naive girl and she fell in love with the prince. Now, if you watch that piece of footage when Prince Charles is asked, "Are you in love, sir?" Princess Diana's beaming.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Well, it obviously
put your own
means,
interpretation.
obviously means two very happy people.
Yes.
Once again, congratulations.
Well, from us, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Very kind.
And she looks at him as if to say, "What are you talking about? Don't you know what love is?" That was the problem from the beginning. Charles didn't really know what love was. In the summer of 1980, the Queen told me that a young girl was coming to stay for the weekend. So I'm standing in the front hallway of Balmoral Castle on the black and white tiles, waiting for this car to arrive. And out of the car comes a shy young girl that nobody knew who she was. She had one little suitcase in the back. "Is that all you've brought with you? You're here for the weekend. You have to go to hunting, shooting, you have to go to the Gillies Ball, tea parties, lunch parties, and that's all you have." She says, "Will it do?" I said, "I think we'd better take you to a room and find out."
Balmoral is the royal family holiday home. Every summer the royal family just decamp to the Scottish Highlands, and it's actually said that it's one of the Queen's favourite places to be. They do a lot of hunting there, walks, sort of nature-focused activities. The dress code is quite laid back, However, that is very much during the day, so it is said that the royals actually change outfits several times a day for various occasions. So they'll have an outfit for breakfast, they'll have an outfit for going out and outdoor activities, dinners. So it's not as laid back as you would think, and actually that is kind of part of what they would have called a bit of a test for Princess Diana for her first visit there a couple of months before the royal wedding.
Diana, having the upbringing that she had, she passed with flying colours. And one of the looks which stands out most from her trip to Balmoral is one where she's standing next to Charles and they're posing in front of a fence. And Diana is wearing this really kitschy, hot pink jumper. And she looks really relaxed, and she's got a turtleneck underneath, and she's wearing these corduroy trousers and these bottle green hunter boots. And you can just tell by the outfit that she's wearing, the way she's holding herself, she's so relaxed, she's really at ease.
For her off-duty look at Balmoral, Princess Diana was photographed with the famous hunter boots. We all know them now as a festival essential. Kate Moss wears them, all the celebrities wear them, and they're, you know, deemed really cool. But actually, you could argue that Princess Diana is the one who put them back in fashion because she was photographed wearing them at the Scottish estate.
Well, the cracks in their relationship, I think they began to show very quickly. Because Diana didn't understand. I mean, after she became engaged to Prince Charles, he never seemed to be around. He was always so busy. And she was moved into Buckingham Palace, and she had her own apartment there, and he was sort of down the corridor. And she was absolutely on her own. I mean, a friend of mine actually was her footman and told me a lot about her at the time. And she was very lonely. She didn't feel she could have her girlfriends there. And I mean, Buckingham Palace is quite a strange place for a teenage girl to be incarcerated, which is really what she was. I think Diana had terrible jitters on her wedding day. In fact, the night before, she'd wanted to get out of the whole thing. And she'd had a sort of funny, jokey evening with her sisters. And they said, "You can't get out of it now, your face is on the tea towels." And that made her laugh. But she discovered about Camilla. She discovered that Charles was giving her gifts. And she didn't know the half of it, but she knew that Camilla was a very important person in her fiancé's life. And she says she became obsessed.
I, Diana Frances.
I, Diana Frances.
Take thee, Charles Philip Arthur George.
Take thee, Philip Charles Arthur George.
To my wedded husband.
To my wedded husband.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold.
From this day forward.
From this day forward.
According to God's holy law.
According to God's holy law.
And thereto I give thee my troth.
And thereto I give thee my troth.
Princess Diana's wedding dress is one of the most iconic wedding dresses of all time. It was designed by, at the time, husband and wife duo David and Elizabeth Emanuel. And really interestingly, they didn't have a brief for it. So obviously for the designers, it was quite a momentous task to undertake, and the pressure for the designs not to be revealed was really quite high.
David and Elizabeth Emanuel set up their fashion business in London's Brook Street in 1977. They're a young team specialising in expensive, high-fashion romantic clothes, particularly evening wear and dreamy wedding dresses, but they've never made a royal wedding dress before. All their designs are individual. If you have a dress made here, you won't see anyone else wearing the same thing. Princess Anne shops here, so does Princess Michael of Kent, the Duchess of Kent and Bianca Jagger. Although the couple have made clothes for Lady Diana before, they never really thought they'd get this job, and tonight they said it was too early to say how it might look. But how did they feel when they first heard?
Very honoured and very happy and delighted, obviously, with the news.
And what about you, Elizabeth?
Over the moon, very thrilled.
How long will it take to make?
Early days, from now till the end, to the day of the wedding. We'll be working on it.
Any ideas at the moment?
Not yet, because it's early days and a lot of discussion has to take place and, you know.
And what are you going to do tonight to celebrate?
Just go home and see the children, I think.
Do they know yet?
But they're too young to know, but we'll tell them when they get older.
It was such a huge deal. It was the biggest royal wedding in decades, if not more, because the Queen had quite a pared-back wedding and it wasn't a televised affair, whereas this, everyone was going to watch. So what they did is they actually did a second wedding dress, which never really saw the light of day. It was very similar to it, but more pared back. They say it had a deeper V-neck neckline and just fewer ruffles, fewer pearls, more understated.
Diana's wedding dress really is one for the ages. It is peak 80s extravagance and opulence, and it was a statement. It is arguably the most iconic wedding dress throughout history, or at least one of. The reason being, when she stepped out at St. Paul's Cathedral, all eyes were on her. She had these glorious, huge puff sleeves. She had ruffles down the front, a full skirt, sequins, 10,000 pearls, and a train that ran for 25 feet. Their wedding marked this new sort of era in the royal family, so it had to be a big moment. And because it was going to be such a big moment, the identity of the dress and what it looked like had to be kept really under wraps.
Although you don't really see Princess Diana's shoes in any of the pictures or the videos, they were designed by the Emanuels as well, and they were designed to match the dress, and they featured lace, a few pearls, had a heart on the toe, and really there was a lovely little romantic detail to them because Princess Diana was rather romantic, so she had C and D designed under the sole of the shoe. So you didn't see it, but obviously she knew it was there, and it was a sweet nod to her husband-to-be. Really interestingly, it said that after her divorce, Princess Diana didn't want to wear any Chanel logo items because it was the interlocked two C's, so she thought it was too much of a reminder of Prince Charles and Camilla.
But did you ever look at the footage of that? Next time you look at it, watch me. Can't you see me looking from side to side? Can you see me doing that? Do you know what I'm doing? I'm looking for her. I'm looking for Camilla. And she was there. She was even at my wedding. So this spectre of Camilla was always there in the princess's life.
Princess Diana fell pregnant quite quickly after the royal wedding with Prince William, and that was going to mean the heir to the throne, the first royal baby in a long time. Naturally, everyone was interested and already in love with her, so wanted to photograph her maternity style at every step of the way.
Perhaps the most notable thing about Diana's maternity style is that she didn't try to blend in.
A lot of pregnant women even today probably don't feel comfortable or don't want to showcase their growing bump. And historically in the royal family, you didn't really show your bump either. You know, as recently as the Victorian era, you had Victorian pregnancy corsets.
And she would wear bright colours, she would wear prints, so often she embraced the polka dot print in her looks, and she would wear statement outfits that didn't try and shy away from the spotlight. And one of the most significant looks for her maternity wardrobe was this Catherine Walker gown that she wore in 1984. She wore it on the red carpet, and the gown itself was incredibly beautiful and elegant, and it was powder blue and it had a sort of blazer top and a dropped waist and a full skirt. But the dropped waist are a function of sort of exaggerating her bump, and it really embraced her shape, and it was a celebration of all things to do with maternity chic.
In the early days, Diana's light was small, but it began to shine brighter and brighter and brighter. And it was a sort of a Star is Born situation. Prince Charles would say to her, "While I married you, I made you a princess. You weren't born royal. I'm the royal." So it would peeve him when on royal visits, people would be shouting on one side of the street, "We want Diana, we want Diana."
We want Diana! I've come to the conclusion that really it would have been far easier to have had 2 wives. To have covered both sides of the street. And I could have walked down the middle, directing the operation.
This is a man who's been born to be king. This is a man who has been treated from the very beginning as a god. Suddenly being eclipsed by this woman, he wasn't very happy.
To be engaged to such a lovely lady, and my goodness, I was lucky enough to marry her. And we had many messages. It's amazing what ladies do when your back's turned.
I think after they got married and they went on their honeymoon, even then things were starting to unravel a bit, because I don't think it matched what Diana had expected. She had this vision of being like a fairy princess and being carried away into the sunset. But the minute she was married, her husband was off working. On the honeymoon, she was so in love, but he spent a lot of time reading books. You know, she was on this enormous yacht, Britannia, surrounded by like 200 crew, and yet she was on her own and she didn't know how to deal with it. She was too young and too naive, and Charles was on the upper deck reading and sunbathing, and she was lonely. I don't think it really sank in. She was very naive, and I think she thought, oh, one day I'll be queen, fine. But I think it was really more the pressure of being on such public display that got to her, and I think that's the pressure that gets to every girl that marries into the royal family. But no one had ever experienced this before. Diana was the first one. And I remember the Queen sort of saying, it's just because she's young and new and it'll all calm down. Because it never calmed down, it just got worse. So she was under a lot of pressure.
You know, there wasn't a newspaper that didn't at some time print something about Diana. Most of it, interesting enough, was positive, but there was the negative aspect of the Diana story that A, she didn't like, and I dare say a lot of people didn't like either.
The royal tour of Australia and New Zealand was a big deal for Diana. It was the first international tour that she was going to do, and it wasn't that long after she gave birth to Prince William, and she actually asked for him to come on tour even though it wasn't the done thing.
Does Prince William have a favourite toy?
Jamie, he loves his koala bear he's got. But he hasn't got anything particular. He just likes something with a bit of noise. He got a plastic whale that throws things out the top, little balls.
Throughout that tour, you can start to see the initial signs that Diana is embracing her fashion. So she's wearing brighter colours, she's wearing turquoise, hot pink and yellow. But notably, the silhouette's still quite feminine, so she'll wear ruffles and she'll have a cinched waist and quite a flowy skirt. So they're still quite safe looks considering what she went on to wear. But there's one outfit that she wore in Perth, and it's a hot pink dress with polka dots, and she has a hat to match. And I think what people loved is that obviously she would stand out in a crowd. And what is more gloriously 80s than a princess wearing hot pink?
Her wardrobe there was really, she was pushing the boundaries. It was really sleek yet bold. There was a beautiful sheer blue metallic dress she wore for a ball. There was the dress she was photographed in dancing with Prince Charles. There was a bright pink gown which she wore with her Spencer tiara, and people loved it. The pictures just went everywhere.
In these 6 weeks, the Princess of Wales has probably become the world's most photographed woman. It must have been an ordeal, but she's rarely shown it. She's responded to adulation with modesty and spirit. The monarchy will be the benefactor. And there were, of course, the clothes, fashion with a completely individual flair. 50 outfits in 42 days.
The Royal Tour of Australia sort of cemented this idea and the start of what we now know as Diana mania. What she wore became a focus and people wanted to see her outfits. She was carving out this place for herself as an icon which we now know and love, and her looks at the time started to show the early signs of what she'd go on to achieve sartorially. One of Diana's most famous pieces was her black sheep jumper, and we first see her wearing it when she goes to the polo. She's engaged to Prince Charles, and in the picture she's quite shy, she's not performing for the cameras, and she has this little tiny collar poking out the top of the black sheep jumper, and she's wearing jeans, she's very casual. And interestingly, this rowing blazers design she then rewears 2 years later.
And you can very much tell that there has been a shift between the two pictures. In the second image, she's standing straighter, she's kind of looking at the camera, and the jumper obviously has a black sheep on it. So I think the first time she wore it, it was obviously just she found it was a cute jumper, so wasn't thinking anything about it. The second time, the jumper is slightly different, so we don't actually know what happened between the two, if she lost weight or just lost it. And the sheep is actually facing a different direction to the white sheep, and she was also wearing a white shirt underneath with a black bow that sort of points to the black sheep. And a lot of people were saying that it was a statement at the time because there were already a few arguments with Prince Charles. She was considered a bit of a rebel, she didn't want to follow all the rules in the family, so it sort of symbolised her being the black sheep of the royal family.
The 80s was a significant period of transformation for Diana. In this decade, she becomes a wife, a mother, a princess, and also an international icon. At the start, we start to see her in a preppy sort of aesthetic. She's got pie-crust collars, she's wearing cardigans, sweater vests, pleated skirts, and she'd carry a little woven basket with her when she was spotted around London. On the royal tour by 1983, she's starting to experiment a little bit and play with her style, her colours that she's wearing, and different shapes that she'll start to experiment with. Her wedding dress was really the first moment where she broke boundaries. Actually, there was a dress that she wore just before, which was also designed by the Emanuels, and she wore that to a charity gala with Prince Charles, and it was a black sweetheart strapless neckline dress. Showed a bit of cleavage, and even Lord Snowdon actually mentioned she looked stunning in it, and really everyone looked at her. And it was so spectacular that the next day was meant to be the reveal of the budget, but her dress instead made all the headlines, so they released the budget a day later because this dress was so phenomenal. As the 80s went on, she became increasingly confident. So towards the late 80s, for example, she wore lots of sequined gowns, which would perhaps have been thought to be more for Hollywood actresses, but she would wear them and wear them really well. And she actually earned the nickname Dynasty Di thanks to them. By the end of the decade, she's really hit her stride, and she is wearing almost all of the 80s trends, and she's playing quite a significant role in setting them as well. She'll wear tailored angular pieces, she'll wear block colours, dropped waist, padded shoulders. One of the most famous dresses of that era was the John Travolta dress, which was designed by Victor Edelstein, and it was off-the-shoulder, long-skirted, midnight blue dress, which she wore to dance with John Travolta at the White House.
I did notice that one day, going through the drawing room, the old Queen Mother, she passed the magazine table, and Diana's face was on the front of Hello Magazine. And as she walked past the table, she flipped the magazine over onto its backside and carried on walking. That to me said, she's not really accepted. They don't like it. She's beginning to outshine even the senior members of the royal family. This is dangerous territory.
So my favourite look of Diana's in the 80s, although I'm tempted to say the John Travolta dress, it was actually a more understated style by one of her favourite designers, Catherine Walker. And she wore it for a dinner in Melbourne in 1988. And it was a light pink kind of ruched dress. It was strapless, but with a column dress, very chic, with pale blue flowers imprinted on it. And at the back, it featured quite a big, spectacular bow that really elevated the dress. Princess Diana and Catherine Walker's relationship really blossomed in the late 80s, which is when Princess Diana really found her true sort of permanent style and the one that a lot of people know and love. Her designs were well known for being sleek, very tailored, and a very sort of minimal aesthetic. And actually, Princess Diana was buried in one of Catherine Walker's black coat looks in 1997.
My favourite Diana look from the 80s has to be when she goes to the polo, and the specific outfit she's wearing has got this two-piece set. It's a puffy blouse with a big print on the front of it. It's monochrome, and she wears a black leather belt with white trousers, and her hair is kind of blown out in this Farrah Fawcett type vibe. And I think this signals the start of another era for Diana. She's starting to find her confidence and starting to use fashion as a way to express herself. And the fact that she also looks quite comfortable and confident, I think, is reflected in the outfit and back into how she must have been feeling back then. So in the 80s, Diana's style is quite experimental, and she's playing around with the latest trends, and she's starting to really hit her stride in terms of her fashion, her aesthetic. By the 90s, her style matures once again, and she's starting to dress more for her. And it's believed that this is perhaps her freest decade in terms of what she wears and why she wears what she wears. So instead of donning bright, glittery sequin dresses, she'll lean in more towards a less overt look. She'll go more minimalist. She'll wear simple shift dresses, or she'll wear tailored suits.
As her style became simpler, it was actually more accessible. So whereas before she was the unattainable princess, now she was more of a chic civilian, as it were. Her looks were copied, and they influenced a lot of celebrities, from Madonna to Cindy Crawford to Elizabeth Taylor. So after Princess Diana and Prince Charles separated in the early 90s, the princess's confidence grew, and that directly translated into her fashion choices. So she kind of threw the rule book out the window, and that resulted in a more minimal aesthetic, but she didn't deprive herself of wearing anything, you know, that would have been deemed more sexy or too sexy before. Sleek fitted designs, muted tones, a bit of a pastel colour palette, beiges, blacks, whites, and very sleek and tailored designs, more fitted. Princess Diana revealed her very famous 90s sleek haircut on the Vogue cover in 1990, and that was arguably her most iconic look and spurned so many copies. You know, she was the original The Rachel. A lot of people went to hairdressers asking to copy that look, and it was beautiful and sleek and really went with her wardrobe of the 90s. When she was a princess, she wore a lot of UK brands and very traditional ones, but when she left the royal family and became even more of an international icon because she embraced lots of other big brands such as Versace and Dior, and of course we all know that they named a Dior bag after her, so the Lady D bag. Historically speaking, the royal family, when they met with crowns, they often wore gloves as a way of not catching germs and not becoming ill. But Princess Diana made headlines because she chose not only not to wear gloves to meet patients with AIDS, but she also hugged them and held their hands. And at the time, there was still the belief that if that is how you could catch AIDS, if you touched AIDS patients.
There was a memo came from Buckingham Palace. Diana, when you're in public, please wear a hat and please wear gloves, because you're touching the public and you might catch something. And I'm not too sure about you touching those people with HIV and AIDS. Are you sure you're safe?
HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hands and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it. What's more, you can share their homes, their workplaces, their playgrounds, and their toys. We all need to be alert to the special needs of those for whom AIDS is the last straw in an already heavy burden of discrimination and misfortune.
she visited a lot of sick children in hospital. And for those visits, because it was already a glum environment, she chose to wear really bright floral neon dresses with jangling jewels, so that they would sort of see her as a bit of a clown and they could play with her. And it was, you know, all about touching the textures of the dress. And she made them feel like they were really at home with her.
In most circumstances, when the man on the street, if you like, meets royalty, it's in a situation that's planned, it's corralled, and you stand there and you'll be there, and somebody will come along and you'll shake your hand, don't say anything, you either bob or you curtsy, and then you move on, and that's your lasting impact of royalty. That wasn't Diana. You know, Diana would come along, this shaking of the hand and this bobbing nonsense, you know, she would often say, don't call me ma'am, call me Diana, you know, and engage them in a conversation that people would never forget.
Single acts of humanitarianism were what she brought to so many people's lives. She shone a light on their plight. She took the world's media and showed us that we should do more for these people.
I think the royal family really forget the impact that some of their interviews are going to have. And Dimbleby asked Prince Charles, really, when his affair with Camilla started, and he said when his marriage had irrevocably broken down. And that was after Prince Harry was born. She was delighted, actually, when that interview came out. I think she suddenly thought, oh, right, here you go now. It's your turn. It made her look the wronged wife, which, of course, she was.
3 years earlier, she'd had the dress made, and it was perhaps thought to be a bit daring. It was quite fitted, it was off the shoulder.
We can't prove that Diana knew she would eclipse Prince Charles in the headlines the next day, but we do know that she told her stylist that she wanted to look like $1 million, and that obviously resulted in her pictures being splashed across all the papers the next day and Charles being vilified.
It really is a testament to the power of a particular outfit and the impact it can have. So in the 80s, her outfits are very much the focal point of a lot of her sort of public appearances, and she uses it as a tool to effectively communicate and express herself with the public. And in her final years, you can see that her style starts to become more pared back, and one might argue that that could be because she doesn't want the focus to be as much on what she's wearing, although she looks incredibly chic in her outfits, but more what she's doing, her philanthropic ventures, and she wants that to be forefront.
Some of Princess Diana's most beloved looks were actually some of her final looks in the 90s, because she always looked chic but understated, and she actually wore some of her most casual looks in those days, especially when she went to sports days at Prince William and Prince Harry's schools, because she didn't want to draw attention to her and away from the boys, so she just wore outfits that any normal mum would wear. But even when she was off duty, Princess Diana's style never faltered. She always looked chic. Princess Diana had a bit of an athleisure phase in the 90s.
The fact that she would wear slouchy jumpers and cycling shorts and trainers and double denim when she was either doing the school run or if she was going to the gym. These looks have become kind of cemented in cultural history, so much so that years later, decades later, people are still channeling them and paying homage to them. So Hailey Bieber's Vogue shoot took some of her most iconic athleisure wear looks and reimagined them today, because the thing about Diana's style is that it remains timeless and it remains cool and relevant.
And actually that coincided with cycling shorts coming back in fashion across the catwalk from various designer collections. Princess Diana often wore these cycling shorts, chunky trainers, which again are massively in fashion again, and a Virgin Atlantic oversized baggy sweatshirt. Princess Diana actually wore the sweatshirt to taunt photographers a little bit, because they were constantly hounding her, bearing in mind this was after the separation. So she thought if she re-wore the same Virgin Atlantic sweatshirt, they would grow bored of her and not photograph her as much. Princess Diana's style, especially in her later years, is still very much referenced today and very much influences designers and trends, from cycling shorts to high-waisted jeans, oversized blazers, square neck dresses. A lot of people want to be like Princess Diana.
Even as a non-working member of the royal in the latter stages of her life, she'll always be remembered for her work and her program of modernization, this sort of getting in touch with people, and her program against government advice of getting involved in the lands mines crusade in Angola and Mozambique. It was very important for people to remember that. And I think that's why people to this day still remember and talk about Diana, because of the way that she began a change at the beginning of how we perceive the royal family to be. And I think in her two sons, certainly William, more so now than Harry because of his situation, sees a direction very much akin to that of his mother.
We all remember the two iconic swimsuits she wore when she was on holiday with Jodie Al-Fayed. So one of them was a leopard print swimsuit while she went jet skiing with him. The other one was a blue swimsuit with a plunging back that she wore to sit at the end of a diving board, and that is a picture that we all remember.
Hasnat Khan had been the princess's companion for over 2 years. Nobody knew about Hasnat Khan. That was not played out on the world stage. Whereas, after they'd broken up, the princess was invited to the south of France by the Mohammed Al-Fayeds. Did you know that the romance of the princess and Jodie Al-Fayed was 30 days from beginning to end? It only lasted 30 days. That was not the love of her life. That was not the man she was going to marry. That's all fabrication. I spoke to her regularly when she was away. Have you seen Hasnat? I said, yes, I went for a drink with him last night. What does he think of me being here in the south of France with Jodie Al-Fayed? Well, he's not too pleased. Has he seen the pictures in the papers? Yes, he has, because you know his routine. You know every morning he goes to the corner shop and sees the press. You know that. And I know that's what you're doing. You're manipulating the world's media by having these pictures taken to show Hasnat who you're with. It's sort of a... Are you jealous? Do you mind? Do you care? Are you bothered? That's what Diana was saying to Hasnat Khan through those pictures in the world's media. And of course, Hasnat was bothered. And I didn't find out until recently that he called her the day before she died on her mobile phone. He called her to try and patch up their relationship. Had she returned to London, I truly believe the romance between Hasnat Khan and the princess would have been rekindled. It was too strong. It was too deep. They were true soulmates.
During her life, Diana wearing some of the biggest trends and influencing the fashion industry is undeniable. I think her legacy today is people are still channeling looks that she wore decades ago. She inspires designer collections from Off-White to Celine to Vogue main cover fashion shoots. She's still incredibly relevant, and I think that needs to be remembered. Whenever Kate Middleton or Meghan Markle step out and they wear a look which resembles something Diana has worn, the internet goes wild for it because they love to see these comparisons to a person who is arguably one of Britain's most famous fashion icons. She remains relevant and she remains part of the nation's identity. While Diana's revenge dress is undeniably a favourite for many Diana fans, my favourite look is one that she wore in the 1988 polo match. She's wearing this oversized masculine blazer over this British Lung Foundation charity jumper. She's wearing Levi's with cowboy boots and a cap. And part of this look and why it's become so famous and so ingrained in the Diana history is because it typifies her approach to fashion. She's quite casual, she's laid back, and she is effortlessly cool. And I think that's what this look really sort of represents, and that is why it's one of my favorites.
It's hard to choose a favourite look of Diana's, but if I had to, I would say one of her final outfits, which was a blue cocktail dress by Jacques Azaguri, which she wore to a performance of Swan Lake at the Royal Albert Hall. And it was very, very simple, very Audrey Hepburn-esque, and it had thick straps, a square neckline, which has come back in fashion again, another perfect example of how she's influenced designers today. And it was bright blue, and it was embellished with sequins, and it stopped just above the knee, and it was impossibly chic. How I remember Princess Diana's style is bold, chic, colourful, pared back, a lot of contradictions and rule breaking.
I watched Diana blossom from a shy young girl, 18 years old, at Balmoral Castle. I watched the years pass by. She was pushed in the deep end and told to swim. She was told to survive. She was never taught to survive. She learned very quickly. And through the romantic years, and then through the power dressing years, and then the simple dressing years, becoming a global businesswoman, becoming an icon. I watched all of that, becoming the most famous woman in the world. I saw her as beautiful inside as she was on the outside. What an incredible human being.
Her journey throughout the 80s and into the 90s is one that the nation watched as she grew and as she flourished, and you could see that very much so in what she decided to wear. Her legacy now, the fact that the outfits that she wore years and years ago are still being celebrated, recreated, means that we all agree that Diana was incredibly timeless and stylish and iconic.
And we're still talking about her. That's a sign of a great woman. That's a sign of an icon of our times. But I'm also talking to a generation of people who were never around. There's a whole new generation of people who didn't know Diana. And I think I have a moral obligation to say to those young people, I knew her. I stood beside her. I could feel the warmth which she radiated, because she was truly inspirational and unique.